The main thing that you need to work on is rhythm, like by far, more than anything else. Although I would say harmonically, got a lot of work to do there too. In order to, I mean, the way to think about improvising is that it's exactly like grammar, and that the more you know about it, the more different ways you can talk about any subject. And for me, the rhythm thing is the one element that you can't avoid. I mean, you've got to get in there and get real specific with it. It seems like you're rhythmically, you're not as critical of the rhythms that you're playing and how you're executing them as you should be. I mean, for me, I always got to play with guys that had great time. In particular, there was a drummer in Kansas City named Tommy Ruskin. You might have even heard because he plays in Wichita. But he had like great times, and he just wouldn't accept anything that was rhythmically awkward or inaccurate, or if it was like supposed to be this and it wasn't quite, he wouldn't say anything, but he would let you know that it wasn't cool. And it seems like you need to get much more critical about how specific your rhythms are. I mean, just to give you an example, I'll just get this guy. Do you have a drum machine or anything, or a metronome?
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to tape yourself a lot and play with it. And for me, when I'm playing, I'm subdividing in my mind like triplets, like I mean, I can't sing it, but that's everything that I'm playing, whether I'm playing on top or behind or whatever. I'm always like hearing that, not even in my mind, actually in my stomach. I mean, that's always going on. And having played with a lot of good drummers, I notice that's what they do. Even people like DeJohnette or Roy Haynes or somebody who's really going to mess with it, there's always this undercurrent of whatever the smallest subdivision is. And their limbs don't ever have to play it. It's just like they're, like, by virtue of them being there, all those subdivisions are being heard. And if you play something that's a little off, like there I was just playing way behind, as long as you're hearing those subdivisions, it sounds like it's swinging. But if you're not hearing everything that you're not playing, as well as what you are playing, it's going to sound like you're floating on top. So the idea would be to practice things like with a metronome or a drum machine, putting them all kinds of different ways. Like right now I'm playing just right with it. But I can also play way behind it and make it feel different. So I'm behind now, get back with it. It's playing four notes, but all the time, even though I'm just playing, I'm hearing the smallest subdivision.
So you always simplify everything that you triplets?
Well, if it's a swing kind of thing, yeah.
Okay.
If it's an even eighth note thing, it's usually 16th notes.
Yeah.
So I mean, the effect of that is that I'm playing very free against it. I mean, it's loose, but at the same time, everything that I'm playing is very accurate for what it is. It seems like you're not, as like I was saying, the word is critical. You're not as critical about rhythms as you should be. So I would just increase your awareness of that. Also, I mean, the more you can play with really good drummers, the better. And particularly drummers who can talk about what they do. And it doesn't even matter the style. I mean, it could be a jazz drummer or a good country and western drummer. Some drummer who really has a thing. That's the best experience you can have. And I mean, for me, that's where I've always been extremely lucky, especially when I was young. It was good to play with good guys. Harmonically, it seems like you're not as... It's sort of like... I see all the harmony kind of going along like this, and I see you kind of above it, and you occasionally dip down inside it, but you're not like really in it all the time. You're kind of playing over it.
That's
and I mean, you know, there's two guys, and I mean, I'm not to say that. I mean, I know that you're already very aware of it, but the more that you can really get a detailed, hands-on feel of what Charlie Parker and Coltrane did, I mean, the more you've got it, because those are the two real, like, vivid examples of how to get it so that the lines are inside the rhythm section rather than on top, which to me is always the goal. Where you're actually, when you're playing a solo or something, you're like in there with the bass and drums. You're not riding on top, and that's something very few. Hardly any guitar players can do it. Very few jazz guys, period, can do it. There's a lot of guys who float and who are on top playing with a rhythm section. There's very few guys who actually are like in there getting their hands dirty harmonically and rhythmically all at once in the context of their solo. To me, that's always the most appealing kinds of players. I mean, you know, as far as contemporary guys, I mean, there's Brecker who can really do that.
Love Michael.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Schofield is one of the guitar players that can do it. Jim Hall's always been able to do it. Wes Montgomery did it. You know, it's that thing where there's no difference between what the rhythm section's playing and what the soloist is doing.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm following. You mean
Well,
rhythmically,
yeah.
mostly?
Like, for instance, when I'm playing now, and just then I played a chorus of blues, and you could hear every chord change in the line.
Right.
And like the kind of thing you were playing, it was more like. I mean, you were making the changes. It wasn't that you weren't making the changes, but you weren't really saying the changes. You were kind of like. I mean, it was correct, but you weren't implying a lot of harmonic activity. You were kind of. I mean, you're kind of at that stage where. You've got a handle of what notes you play on what chords, and you don't make big clams too much in terms of playing like a major third on a minor chord and that sort of thing. But you're not really at the point yet where you're like describing the chords in a real eloquent kind of way, and that would be a real goal. That's what I'm talking about in terms. I mean, you know, to me that the best players are guys who can play with just a bass line or even just drums, and you hear all of the harmonic information in the tune that they're playing. And that's an area you should probably work on a lot. Okay. Now the key, one just guitaristic key to that I don't hear you doing a whole lot, and it's one of those things that's real obvious and not too many people get it together, is to just be able to play arpeggios of whatever chord you're playing as opposed to the scale. I mean, like about probably 50% of what I play, I'm not playing any chord tones at all. I mean, any scale tones. I'm only playing chord tones.
Like as a rule, or just what you're playing tonight?
Yeah, well, even what I was just playing was very much outlining chords, but in a rhythmically interesting kind of way. In fact, I'll just do chorus. I'll only play chord tones. Making up new progressions.
I was going to say, are you outlining some subs and stuff?
Yeah, which is that's the whole Coltrane thing. Just making up new progressions based on the original.
A lot of times, when I'm playing in the context of like a full rhythm section, I'm not consciously trying to outline the changes. I mean, I like to kind of. I mean, I know I should be able to, but I just have a tendency to work over it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I figured, well, the piano player and the bass player are banging out the changes.
That's good. That's fine. And the thing to do is to take that concept in terms of playing over it and be able to do that, but also be able to do it the other way.
Right.
So that you can, I mean, the ideal situation is to be able to do anything and then to be able to decide what you're going to do at the time rather than only being able to do certain things and sort of having to do those things. Same with phrasing. I mean, it's good to be able to phrase all kinds of different ways, rhythmically as well as in terms of how you're going to pick it and everything, so that you can do it a lot of different ways. Like some guys, for instance, only phrase like by picking,
right?
And it's good to be able to not pick, depending on how you want the line to sound. But some guys just can't switch in the middle of the line. They're either not picking or they're picking. And I mean, it's even a goal of mine is to be able to really get that together so that I can phrase it all kinds of different ways, not just have to do it a kind of slippery way. If I want to articulate each note, I can do that too, and be able to real freely get back and forth between all the different kinds of phrasing that you're capable of. As well as this thing I was saying before, of being able to play way on top or way behind or right in the middle at will and be able to switch amongst them in the context of a line, just like on a dime.
And how are you thinking harmonically? I mean, well, I don't mean just so much on blues, but I mean, your playing is like, you do a lot of like, I don't really know how to explain it, but like Mike Brecker, you can hear him covering the changes, and it's like he just kind of steps out of it and comes back.
Well, but the thing is, it's not really that so much as doing that thing of just, I mean, at this point, it's very difficult for me to play anything that I hear as being outside of the chords, because everything that I play, I see it as relating to, I mean, with the exception of major sevenths on minor seventh chords, I can pretty much hear all 12 tones on any chord now. And that was something that took a long time to get together. But I mean, like if I'm playing that note and it's on a C, I mean, I'm generally hearing all the notes below it that would lead to it. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you're not thinking, you're just thinking extensions.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then so to get that.
So if it's like, like for instance on a blues, I mean, if I'm playing, and then I do like a, or something like that. I mean, I just started thinking of, like if it were that chord, there's all these other notes up here that become extensions, but playing them in lower registers. And also making up new chord progressions all the time.
Yeah, I can hear that.
But I'll tell you the truth, this is true with Brecker and with me and almost every good player. If you have great time, you can play anything. It's like where that's, I can sit here and play a chromatic scale and it's going to sound like it's some hip shit because of the way it's being played, almost as much as what the notes are, yeah. Because it's like, if you get that groove happening, people just follow it. It's like, that's what people respond to on a much more instinctual level, more than notes. And there's a million saxophone players who know all the hip shit that Brecker knows, but it just doesn't sound as good when they play it. Is a great player, but his time is nowhere near as good as Brecker's. And Brecker's, got the thing in a way that won't, even though actually is probably more harmonically creative than Brecker. He knows more shit than just about anybody in terms of how to do that thing.
But you're saying it comes across more because of his rhythm?
Because Brecker's rhythm is just like, it's like a truck, going down a hill. It's just fantastic. And that kind of rhythm feel is absolutely the hardest thing to get on a guitar because we have such a small dynamic range relative to those guys.
How did you develop that? Just working with a metronome and...
Yeah, and playing a lot. I've probably played more hours per day than, most people ever get the opportunity to. I just have had lots of chances to do it. And I'm also very aware of what makes something, or I try to be aware of what makes something have that kind of feel. And it was pretty clear to me that the difference between like Wes Montgomery and Jim Hall and everyone else was rhythm, and that was pretty easy to see early on. The way plays rhythm would be unacceptable on any other instrument. Just wouldn't have the thing. It would sound stiff. And most guitar players have that kind of phrasing. It's a phrasing that if you were to imagine in your mind Clifford Brown or somebody playing it, it wouldn't be believable. Mm-hmm. And the best thing you can do is just really listen a lot to people who have great time and try and get that same feel.
But the only people I listen to are like horn players, Miles, Train, tons of like Brecker, anything he's on. I listen to like Miles and Train.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of your stuff.
Sonny Rollins is good to listen to also because his lines tend to be easy to play on the guitar. They're not, a lot of Coltrane shit is so hard just to execute on the guitar because of all the leaps and all that. And also his thing was so, just his sound, he had another thing, which is his sound was so unbelievable that the way some guys can get away with playing something that's maybe not that effective just on a technical level, but it's got the thing rhythmically, he's also got that, plus his sound was so like pure and everything that he could just play one note, which you can never get that same thing on the guitar. Yeah, Sonny's thing is very instructive. Because also another area that a lot of guitar players aren't so good at is keeping it going for long stretches. Like where you take one little idea and just make it last for a whole solo or something. Guitar players have a tendency to, because the guitar is sort of mechanical, to move on, like laying with something specific. And Sonny is really great to listen to get discipline of making a little out of, or making a lot out of a little. And also rhythmically, he's got the thing. I mean, in a way, I mean, for me, more than almost anybody, trying to emulate his way of playing helped me on the guitar.
Sonny?
Yeah.
When you were, to go back a minute, when you're thinking like subs and things, are you thinking also like extensions off of those?
Absolutely, yeah.
So when you play a sub, you don't just lay out like
Right.
3rd, 5th.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
In fact, it's rare that you would play the root at all. I mean, you would think of the 3rd and 7th and the extensions of that. That's.
Would you think, and like altered extensions and everything?
I mean, that's what all that Coltrane shit is. All of it. It's generally 5, like dominant 7 chords in tridoing substitutions with each other with all of the extensions available all the time. I mean, it's hard to find notes that he played that didn't fall into that category. I mean, in terms of dominant 7 chords with a 2 in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the extensions available all the time.
But it all ties in, you're saying, more rhythmically.
Yeah, I mean, and especially just a little bit that I heard from you now. I mean, I think all that harmonic information is stuff that you can learn, and you can get it together and all that sort of thing. The rhythmic thing is something that is going to be very difficult. I mean, it's because of the instrument. It's really hard to get on the guitar, and it seems like you're quite a bit further away from that than you are from the harmonic thing. I mean, that I would say that's like a major project for you, to really get it so that there's a sense of rhythmic definition and rhythmic power that is underneath everything. And it's not something you can do by yourself either. I mean, you really have to do it in the context of real volume with a drummer than you do when you're playing by yourself in a room. And it just, I mean, it means hours of playing every day with somebody who's really good and who's really also got that as a priority, that sort of rhythmic weight, I mean, short of playing with a good drummer, playing with a drum machine is it's something that we have available to us now that people younger than us didn't. I mean, because these things, have got all that, and you can crank them up loud. I mean, it's like playing with the real thing to a large degree. I mean, and in terms of rhythmic precision, I would say it's better to play with that than to play with a bad drummer. So that's the thing.
Could we try like a couple more courses with the drum machine?
Sure.
I can have another go.
You have a tendency also to land on notes that are not strong notes harmonically. It'd be real good discipline to play with something like this. playing real simple. That's like, very, nothing real fancy happening there, but that somehow says a lot about the harmony, and it's interesting to listen to. In some ways, that's more interesting to listen to than a lot of fast stuff, especially early in a solo. Playing simple is also the hardest thing to do. It's much harder to do that than it is to like play a lot of scale type stuff. So I would recommend doing that with the idea of seeing how it is to land on real strong notes on strong beats. And there were times where I was hearing you landing on like ending phrases on the C minor part of it on E flats, and I even heard an E natural on one of them. That kind of thing. I mean, it gives the impression, it's sort of like as if you're talking and you end a sentence on a, like a weird part of the rhythm of the sentence. It's sort of like you're saying, and or something like that, as opposed to like ending it with a period, like, okay, that's the end of that, and that's the end of that. I mean, later you might want to get it so that you sound sort of like staggered, like you're kind of like leading towards something and you're not quite getting to it, but it's better to start out with trying to make very clear, very concise kind of statements. And that thing of just playing like chord tones and playing real simple is a good exercise towards that.
Rhythmically, was I any closer to that?
Well, rhythmically, it's still, it sounds to me, it sounds like a guitar player to me, and it sounds like you're not really in it. You're kind of, you're not far off, but you're not really in it. It's like, you're playing the same basic rhythm, but you're not like. I mean, the goal for me is to get it so that when you're playing with a drum machine, you ultimately don't hear the drum machine. It's like the rhythms are so close, they're so precise that they cancel each other out, and that's a good thing to look for. I mean, I'm also very picky about rhythm, much more than most people. I mean, you can talk to anybody who's played drums in my band or anything. I mean, I drive them and myself crazy about it because I really like to hear it, perfect. And I have to say, all the best players, I mean, like Winton or Coltrane or Jim Hall or, all the guys that I consider to be great players have a great time. And I can't think of one example of somebody who didn't. So, I mean, it's a real important thing to get. Also, when you play like this kind of thing, and this is true of a lot of younger guys, the rhythms aren't. It's not da 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 da. It's da 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 da. I mean, they're all triplets, and I'm hearing you playing dotted eighths and sixteenths a lot.
That's not what I mean,
that's not what it is. It's, in fact, I'll write it down for you just so you see.
Well, I know you're talking like two triplets.
Right.
I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. I mean,
you should work on that one because it's coming out. And it should come out. I mean, virtually even eighth notes. It should sound like, and they're the same length. It's not. The second one is not shorter or more staccato than the first one. They should be exactly the same. And the more that you practice on phrasing, even like that. Even in triplets.
I've never had anybody tell me to work on my rhythm. You know what I mean?
It's like somebody telling you now.
Well, it's great, but
yeah.
I guess that's, I don't know, it's just always been, well, you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you know, like I was saying, I mean, I can count about 4 guitar players in the world, in history, that had this kind of thing. You know, I mean, there's just aren't any.
I didn't mean nobody.
No, I understand.
Because it was great, but I mean, it
No.
just seems like everybody's always thinking harmonic.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, I mean, there's hundreds of saxophone players who have all the Coltrane harmonic shit down. I mean, down. But you don't want to hear them after a while. And the reason is because that other thing isn't there. I mean, I love hearing, I mean, I never mind if somebody's kind of an imitator of Coltrane. I mean, that's not the thing that bothers me about most of those cats.
Mm-hmm.
What bothers me is that the rhythm thing is sort of floaty. I mean, it's like it's on top. It's not in it. You know? Yeah. It's real important for jazz. I mean, and it's, you know, I mean, it's also, I mean, it's weird to say this, but it's true. There's very few white cats who can do it.
I know.
It's true. I mean, there's very few. There's only a couple. And did you ever know a drummer in Wichita named James Van Buren? Black guy.
Mm-hmm.
Used to play with him a lot at that Zanzibar. In fact, it was his gig. And boy, he had the thing. You know, he really did. He also had no patience for like unnecessary fast shit, which I was real prone to when I was there. And I remember a few nights there reading me my rights, you know, and it included when it wasn't playing fast. I mean, it was to group, you know, that was the thing. Let's play another tune.
Okay.
Maybe something like even eighth note style.